As Mud South IAGs, we actually have an innovation that we are working on, and we gave it a tagline, Owesilisa Osekela Owesifazane, that is intended to actually localizing the he for she movement. So I will rush to
Donald, can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead, Donald.
Hello. Okay, thank you. Yes, I was saying as Mud South IAGs, this is an innovation that we came up with, and we gave it a tagline, Owesilisa Osekela Owesifazane, meaning the man who supports the woman, as an initiative to localize the he for she movement in a bid to actually curb gender-based violence in Matabele in the South. So going to the present slide, the problems we are addressing. Generally, we discover that from the presentation that is on the screen there's been an increase in the number of GBV cases. That is up to 70% increase that was recorded in the National GBV hotline of MSASA. And of those 70%, 94% of those cases are cases where men are perpetrators, and 6% where they are actually survivors. So the report is also informed by the situation report in Zimbabwe's gender-based violence studies in July. So the rise has been due to the lockdown. There's also an increase in the number of border jumping cases, the smuggling in of persons, and this has actually exacerbated the risk of young girls and women being exposed to sexual abuse and exploitation. Then there's also less involvement of men as a problem. We realize that men are actually less involved in gender-based violence initiatives since they take it as an aspect that has a feminine face. They think it's actually for women, hence they've been less involved. Then there's also a research that was done by Sharon Muchena, an IAG from the University of Zimbabwe, that also highlighted that there's actually a rise in the number of gender-based violence cases, sexual and gender-based violence cases in bus terminuses or in public transport places. And this is the case also with Matabele and South, especially under lockdown and such times when we're using the Zupco public transport. Women actually being abused in so many ways, emotionally, physically. Then in Umzingwane district, one of the districts where we're implementing the Spotlight initiative, it was also gathered that there's a high number of GBV and child marriages cases that are taking place as a result of illegal minors, makorokoza. So since those guys would have the money, they would just then lure the young girls, and then after they've actually had an agreement or something like that with them, they then abuse them or something like that. Then our intervention, generally we would say, seeing that there is need for men's active participation in the campaigns, we then thought we should take the he for she campaign and actually movement and localize it and make sure that it's actually built locally. So we gave it a tagline that is Owesilisa Osekela Owesifazane, meaning the man who supports the woman. This was an initiative to make sure that we bring men on board as actually brand owners of the change as we fight against GBV. So we have managed to do a number of community awareness campaigns educating. We're actually planning to do community awareness campaigns educating men to transform their Then we have actually held one radio program, as much as we also look into holding many other, in order for us to discuss issues of SRHR, ending violence against women and girls, and harmful practices. Then since we also have our hotlines, we have managed to share hotlines on radio, and we've also managed to share hotlines on social media, and we still continue to do the same and give referrals to those participants who actually need help. We have actually managed to share a number of informative videos that have been recorded by other male figures. We've actually committed to the He for She campaign, and we've also managed to capture the certificates, the commitment certificates, and share them online so as to motivate other men to actually join the movement. And we're also looking into conducting in-person virtual capacity building trainings for men in local leadership. This is a way of actually trying to engage charismatic leaders. To the next slide, please. Next slide. Hello? Okay, thank you. So far, I would want us to know that the results that are projected on the screen there are actually at output level. So I'm saying so far 84 people have committed to the he for she movement, 38 of those being males and 44 of them being females. So the participants that have actually committed actually include a number of other stakeholders like the victim-friendly unit, the headmen and Ministry of Women Affairs, and the number of youths in Bambazi village in Bolilima district where YesTrust is implementing the he for she program. And we also managed to get a number of commitments from the UN IFPs. We've also increased in the number. Then we've also had reached out to 175 people on radio, the talk show that we had on Kurumani FM. And we've had a number of them, actually 115 of them being engaged via the radio station's WhatsApp group. Then one headman was also recruited to the campaign as advocates for against child marriages and SGBV during community gatherings. Then, owing to the contribution to the fight against gender-based violence, our he for she movement has so far been featured in the UNCT weekly report on COVID. So those are general results that we've actually managed to get since we've started the he for she movement. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Donald. So I think we are going on to the next presentation, which is Peace Begins at Home campaign in Manicaland. And Chido is going to lead us through this. So I think as you have noticed, these three presentations are looking at men as agents. How can men support the fight against gender-based violence? So Chido, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Molin. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to be presenting on the Manicaland Baby, that is Peace Begins at Home campaign that we're running. And Molin, can you please move to the next slide? All right, so a brief background on how we've come up with this campaign is because of this COVID-19 pandemic that has resulted in national lockdowns, which has restricted movement of people outside of their homes. It has actually tended to contain girls and women in one place, that is at their homes, with their abusers, who are mostly intimate partners and relatives. And this shadow pandemic has actually loomed gender-based domestic violence across the world. And how we are coming in is we've actually come up with we've actually noted a few problems that have come from this lockdown. The first one being domesticated poly-victimization of women, where survivors have been trapped at home with their perpetrators of different types of violence against women. There's lack of transport for survivors to access gender-based violence services, in which ZUPCO routes and schedules are not sufficient because of this lockdown. Transport has not been moving as much as we would want it to, and survivors will remain stuck at home. Then there's also gender-based violence programs on lockdown, where most non-governmental organizations have been forced to lock down and were never declared essential. Then there's also the problem of psychosocial lockdown, social distancing, which has come from this COVID-19 pandemic, created problems of social disconnection, anxiety and tension at home. For example, I'm a lady and I've been locked down in my house with my husband who's abusing me. And I've been actually used to pouring out to my friend who lives in a close community. But now because of this social distancing, I can't go and complain or find someone to talk to release the tension in my mind. And this has caused anxiety and tension at home. There's also child trafficking and early marriages because of closure of schools, which has exposed young girls to cases of child marriages. Then the slide before this one. Hello, Molly. Yes, thank you. Our intervention, we've been trying to form, or we've actually been forming a movement that is addressing gender-based and domestic violence from the family level. which we termed Peace Begins at Home. In these homes, we have men as the head, and we are trying to work with men in homes to actually begin the peace. The peace is supposed to, if the men appreciates that gender-based violence is not the way to go, then actually it looms to other social spheres, let me say, by bringing support to survivors and home through capacitating 46 community-based organizations and 300 gender-based violence advocates. That was one of what we intend to do, and we're actually in the pipeline doing that. We also looking at strengthening support systems for women who plan to escape from violence at home. With this one is trying to strengthen referral pathways where they can get help when they've been abused. There's also establishment of 45 peace huts in Manicaland. Then offline and online awareness campaigns, referrals for case management, advocacy for behavior change to end stigmatization of survivors as the last one. But behavior change is not an overnight thing. This goes on and on, but we are working in trying to change the mind of men in our communities. Then next slide. Hello.
Can you see the slide, Chido?
Yes, now, thank you. Our results, we've actually had objectives that we have from this campaign that we intend to work at. And the first objective is to build awareness and campaigns on gender-based violence among 1.8 million people in Manicaland through radio programs discussing issues of gender-based violence, sexual reproductive health and rights for women and girls, mechanism to reduce and end child marriages by December 2020. And from this objective, we have trained 46 active community-based organizations and 300 community-based advocates in Manicaland as of now. And we've had 3 sample peace huts established in Chipinge, reaching 18 family cases so far. We have made referrals for 20 women, and we've reached out to more than 90 people through our social media page. And we have reached out to 1,300 people through offline awareness campaigns. Though of now, we are actually on hold because of this pandemic. We're working more online awareness campaigns. And we've created virtual physical networks of different community-based organizations in ending violence against women. So we believe that with these peace huts, women can actually be helped with men being champions in ending violence against women. Thank you.
So, hello everyone, my name is Tendai Musabayana, and I'll be presenting on my research project, Men as Champions and Change Agents in Ending Violence Against Women and Girls in Harare and Blawa. Is this a fallacy? So, the engagement of men is a newly regarded area of intervention, but a neglected field in terms of research. This is evident that from most studies have focused mainly on the victim's perspective to try and understand the perpetrator's profile. And we can also relate from the Zimbabwe Demographic Health Survey, which calculated the prevalence rate of gender-based violence through the victim's perspective. So empirical evidence suggests that the engagement of men is a key aspect in elimination of violence against women and girls. So there is need to investigate the success of men to be champions and change agents. Why do we need to engage men? So the rationale for this movement is that men pose a significant level of power or influence in all levels of influence, such as the household, community, and the societal level. So by understanding also that there are two types of masculinities. There are those which are the toxic masculinities or the hegemonic masculinities from different scholars, and what are referred to as soft masculinities. So in order for us to then determine if we can engage men, we have to assess the possibility of transforming either hegemonic or soft masculinities to be agents of change. That then led to me formulating the objective of first identifying the magnitude of men's perpetration of violence in terms of the forms of violence, and explore the factors underlying the forms of violence against women and girls. So in my methodology, I interviewed men aged 18 to 74 years living in Harare. I triangulated both qualitative and quantitative methods. For qualitative, I used focus group discussion, key informants, and in-depth interviews, and I used a survey for quantitative methods. For ethical considerations, a letter of approval for data collection was granted by the University of Zimbabwe, and approval was then obtained from the Ministry of Human Affairs and the City Health Department. We can move to the next slide. To note these findings, I'm going to present my findings from the content analysis. Right now, I'm in the midst of analyzing my primary data, so I'll be presenting my full research on the 30th of September. So from the evidence from literature, global evidence reveals that about 23 to 38% of all women experience at least one form of violence as perpetrated by men. And a sole study here in Zimbabwe, which actually was conducted among men to understand their extent of perpetrating violence, was conducted by Machisa and Chamu in 2018, revealed that the prevalence of lifetime intimate partner violence is 41%, and that of current, which is 12 months preceding the survey, is 8.8%. So from their findings, 4% have perpetrated either physical or sexual violence. There is need to conduct further investigations in terms of economic and emotional violence. So for the factors which can lead to perpetration of violence, there are a variety, but I'm going to discuss mainly on which have a major impact in terms of men's perpetration of violence. There's the history of child abuse, or witnessing parental intimate partner violence. Evidence has revealed that if a child is exposed to violence at a tender age, they are more likely to perpetrate violence once in their lifetime. So there's also alcohol and excessive consumption of alcohol and substance abuse and gender inequality attitude. There's peer influence and being involved in transactional sex or multi-sexual partners can lead to men's perpetration of sexual violence. So from the review, I can safely say that it's not a fallacy in engaging men to become champions of change. We can relate to the success stories provided by the Badare, a men's forum in the engagement of men who their main motive is to transform toxic masculinities into soft masculinities with the aid of their trained main champions and change agents. So in Zimbabwean context, it is actually possible to have change agents in eliminating. So for us to then build movements from Pillar 6 of the Spotlight Initiative, or probably to make the SDG Goal 6 a reality, there's need to adopt some of their interventions so that the civil societies and the community-based organization can model some of their efforts. Further, to make this a reality to engage men as champions in change, we can adopt the following recommendations. You can move to the next slide. Redefining masculinity starts at a grassroots level. So we have to start young in order for us to break the cycle of violence. The value of working with young adolescents at a time when both gender identities and attitudes are being formed. So there's need to involve the educational sector and the caregivers, among others. So the CBOs and probably the implementing partners in ending violence against have to adapt effective group work methodologies. And in these group work methodologies, this will act as we emphasize on group work activities, which emphasize on positive masculinities, and there's need for skilled facilitation. So we have to also invest in capacity building. There's also need to identify and empower soft masculinities. Evidence has revealed that these soft masculinities are actually afraid to express themselves because of their fear to be labeled in a society as being weak or less masculine. We have to highlight men's roles in care work, focusing work with men on the roles they can have in caregivers. So there's nature supportive male peer groups, fostering alternative male peer groups and creating support networks to help them in dealing with peer pressures. There's need to engage religious and traditional leaders. These are the ones who shape the norms and values of a society. So these are the individuals who can actually redefine masculinity, to redefine what it means to be a man. So as for the researchers, there's need to conduct further studies on the possibility of men to become agents of change in rural settings. We understand that in rural settings, that's where patriarchy is deeply entrenched. So by investigating how we can transform the deeply entrenched norms and values in rural areas, we can then actually make the Pillar 6 dream of the Spotlight initiative a reality and the SDG goal number 5. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, colleagues, Chido, Donald, and Tendai. And I'm happy we have 61 participants in the meeting now. So I'm going to open it up to questions, comments. I see there's a lot of comments in the chat, mainly congratulatory messages to the colleagues on the great interventions that they are doing. So if I can invite any questions, comments, and I see Nobutle's hand up. Okay, so in that order, Nobutle, Zano, and Kuzai, you can come one after the other. And for the three presenters, you can take note of the questions. I think you can address the question to whoever you want to answer, and our three presenters will be the panelists responding to your questions. So Nobutle first, then Zano, and then Kuzai. Nobutle, we can't hear.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Perfectly, yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to thank the March South guys for their presentation. I think as Manicaland, we can also borrow of some of their initiatives, like awarding certificates to the men who are going to engage in their campaign, which we can also adapt. And I think it's an innovation which can actually motivate the men to really become part and parcel of the movements that we are doing. Thank you so much.
Zano, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt South. It was an interesting presentation. My concern or my comment or whatever you may call it is on the statistics that you shared with us in terms of your results. I noticed that this is a he for she campaign, but apparently you have reached, your statistics show that the most people that you have managed to reach out to are more of women than the men. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure I captured that well, that about most of the
So,
people
you're breaking up a little bit.
are women, which is quite an indicator that we are still having some challenges. A campaign that is actually focusing on, can we now? Am I clear now?
Yes, yes, Zano, we can hear you.
Oh yeah, so that is what I was saying to say. It seems as if you have reached out to more women than men in a he for she campaign. What could be the challenges, and how best can we improve more in terms of targeting men than targeting women in a he for she campaign? Thank you.
All right, thanks, Zano. And I hope, Donald, you took note of that question. Kuzai, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Manikal and Matt South, for the wonderful presentations. It shows that the innovations are really working. I wanted to ask on Manikal, you talked about peace huts. What are peace huts? You didn't explain what are peace huts, how do they work, and the impact that they are having. Also, you say that you're strengthening support systems. How are you strengthening the support system as well? Also, with Leave No One Behind lens, how is everyone like on all innovations, the he for she and the peace peace begins at home, in the disaggregation of the participants or the number of people reached. I didn't really take note of youth there or children, because we would want to, in all campusing presentation, where we have everyone take part. Thank you.
Okay, so whilst others can keep note of their, take note of their questions, can I invite Donald to come in and respond, and then Chido afterwards. So Donald, over to you on the challenges in getting men to be involved.
Okay, thank you so much for the questions, Ano. I think your question was like, how then do we intend to scale up the number of men committing to the he for she, since that of women is actually higher than that of men? I would say what has happened is the number of commitments that we've actually have today, most of them we have actually got them from the videos that we've sent. I recorded a video inviting the IFPs, and we recorded a couple of other videos from other commitments from male figures who had committed, and we shared it online, and we managed to play it and share it with other people here and there. So I think maybe there might be need for us to actually maybe try and scale up and share a lot of other videos of male committing, since we actually have from the report here that we have actually 38 males committing to the he for she. It might be better if we can actually reach out to those males again and get them to share some videos, as much as they'd given us the commitment certificates. Maybe you might have to get more of those videos from men who have committed and share them, so that we actually encourage a number of other men to actually commit. Thank you.
So I think basically what Donald is mentioning, I think it brings one point across, that men seem to respond a lot to other men. So by showcasing and putting a lot of men out there as an example, they can role model to get other men to join. And if Matt South colleagues also want to come in with responses later, you can come in. But now I can hand over to Chido to respond to this question about the peace huts.
Okay, thank you, Molin. We'll leave that to Zanu to answer the questions.
All right, thank you, Shido. So I'm taking the question on peace huts. Somebody had raised it, wanted to understand what peace huts are really. So basically, a peace hut is a concept that we have started, in which we are getting into the communities and mobilize the communities to establish what they would call a peace hut, which is a place where they would gather for conflict resolution and also for psychosocial support, like counseling for the cases that may arise within their communities. We are doing this to try to bring the services to the communities, in as much as we understand that most GBV services have been shut down and people are failing to access some of the services that are still open because of transport challenges. So we understand that there are some cases that might bleed us. So the peace hut would gather as a community, and there is someone faces a case, they would bring it to the peace. So we are working with community-based. These are the people who be coordinated, being coordinated by our village heads. We are working with traditional leaders. So we have been working with the villages all over our districts, and they will also be facilitating conflict resolutions and psychosocial support at these peace huts, as well as working with other community advocates. So basically, that's what a peace hut is all about. And in terms of engaging men at these peace huts, we are also trying to establish what we call the Chishawa, the Chishawa Bawarume. The Chishawa Bawarume is almost quite similar to the he for she, but here we are saying as men in that community, they should also have some sessions, a platform where they would gather together as men to discuss issues, where they would discuss also about GBV. In terms of how we are incorporating everybody, leaving no one behind. A peace hut is a place where all cases are going to be resolved, and psychosocial support counseling are going to be provided for everyone, both males and females, and also even children. They will also be assisted at the peace in the communities. That's the peace. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Zano. I might have missed you earlier. So the peace hut is, I'm assuming it's a structure or it's a hut at one of the homesteads. Are they established at the home of a village head, or where are these peace huts located? How do you decide where the peace hut is going to be in the community?
The peace hut is going to be identified by the community leaders themselves. Usually in communities, people know people who are well respected, people who are of good leadership qualities, which include the villagers themselves. We also have religious leaders, and we also have even some counselors and other people who are respected in the community. So they will identify the place that they would say, this is the best place for our village. So it is going to differ, but they are going to do the things themselves, the community. Thank you.
Okay. And the 5 that you have established, where are they located? Whose homesteads? I think, Paul, you want to come in? That's Much Central, Manicaland. Kudzi, I'll come back to you. So maybe, Paul, you can come in.
Currently, we've got 3 in Shipi
Zano, we lost you a little bit. I think you were saying 3 in Chipinge and maybe 2 in Mutasa. Paul, would you want to come in?
All right.
Paul?
Yes. Good morning. Right. The issue with the Peace Hut.
Oh dear. Paul, you're also breaking. Your connection is a bit unstable. Monica Land, is there anybody else who can come in? Chido, Dexter, and Nobufe? Okay, whilst we're waiting for Monica Land team to reconnect or improve their connection, Kudzi, I see your hand is up. Kudzi, go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay.
Paul, if you want, maybe you can switch off and then switch on again. Try to switch off and on. All right. Kudzi, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I'm liking the Peace Hut idea, if it works. So I wanted to ask on the ones that they have established in Chipinge, the 3 ones, on who is manning who mans the Peace Hut, and like the people who man the Peace Hut, do they know where to draw the line between a case that would maybe be out of their hands, like a case that needs police interference? Because like we want to create a hub that harbors intensive cases, like maybe a rape of a child or anything. So who must they resource the Peace Hut, and do they know the line where to say no, this is beyond our intervention, or this is beyond what we can do. We can now, this is a police case or something. That's what I want to understand.
Okay. Zano, I don't know if you can respond. Zano, I see your hand is up.
I think that's an odd hand, but I will let me try to communicate. I'm not sure whether my internet is good enough.
Oh no, we can hear you perfectly now. Yeah.
Okay, it's fine. Thank you. So basically, in terms of the Peace Huts, they are being manned by traditional leaders. Wanamtape, it is the chieftainship clan, which is mainly composed of village heads. So these guys, they are well linked with other professional service providers like the police. And like I have said, that we also supporting systems to improve, the needs of women who have suffered in terms of referral pathways. So basically what they would do is they would resolve cases at the level that they can manage in terms of conflict resolution and providing counseling. As we know that a village handles some cases in their communities, so in a more organized way of GBV, as well as links the police, by in cases where there are some the police, they will link, putting within the existing case management systems in a community, so that there will be a smooth referral pathway to improve, the intake of services. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Zano. Kudzi, I hope you answered on that question. And I see in the comments there was a question. I think this should be this is addressed to Tendai. If you can unpack soft masculinities.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. Soft masculinities, it's a socially constructed term for men who empathize with women and their ideals. These are the men who advocate for change, but they are labeled as less masculine in our society or in our patriarchal beliefs. So they are considered as weak, and they usually they don't express themselves. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tendai. Lindy, I hope you answered. I think this David Beckham is one of those ones. I can't remember the term they used quite a while back. But anyway, and Rufaro says the Peace Heart initiative is a very good initiative. Keep it up. And I think there's been a lot of interest. We'll definitely be reaching out to get more about the Peace Heart initiative. So any other comments or questions, colleagues? Zano, I'm assuming this is an old hand. Any other comments or questions on any of the presentations that were done? Okay, I don't see any. Yes?
Okay, I wanted to ask the presenter who has just presented on how impartial are those who are manning the Peace Arts.
Okay, thanks, Sekai. Zano?
All right. Yeah, in terms of impartiality, I'm sure you are speaking of how they are going to be objective in handling cases without bias towards who and who. So, like I have highlighted before, these these villages, these chiefs, they are not going to operate on their own, but they are going to operate in conjunction with community-based organizations. I mentioned about about community-based organizations that deal with GBV. We have trained on even on the aspect of demarcating which case can also need to. In terms of impartiality, CBOs, and also we have reduced the chances of impartiality in as much as there will be some checks and balances between the different organizations and the CBAs and those who will be handling the cases. So this is how we have tried to put it across. But now we are also open for other suggestions from you guys on how best we can also decrease, that challenge. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Zano. And I see in the comments, Nobuhle also indicated that they are also offering trainings, ongoing trainings, and with traditional leaders working in collaboration with the community-based organizations, that kind of reduces the bias in that there is a lot of people involved. Tinashe put in a question about how do you ensure that those manning the Peace Hearts don't become perpetrators themselves? I think we've had a lot of cases of religious leaders or community leaders who, behind closed doors, are actually perpetrators themselves. So I don't know if this is something you've come across or it's something you are working to improve within the Peace Hearts. So Manikaland, sorry guys, everyone is so interested in the Peace Arts. So Zano, again to you.
All right, thank you for such a good question. Yeah, it's quite common that we are hearing some cases of some people who are interested in handling these cases, but they actually in turn become, much as we are having other community advocates. We hope that as they'll be working together as a team, we will actually reduce the chance of someone perpetrating, because we are trying to reduce a situation whereby one power is the sole power that is going to be handling a case. If you are the only one who is handling that case, then it actually increases your chances because no one is seeing you. But if we partner you with a CBO and also another advocate within that community, as well as linking you with the police, yeah, we know that there is now a third eye that is also watching what you are doing. There is sort of like that check and balance and supervision between each other of these people who are originating this thing. So basically that probably we may reduce cases of them perpetrating. But in the same vein, we are also continuously training them, like Nohle has mentioned, that we have got a WhatsApp group for the CBOs and the villages and the CBAs, in which we do continuous training in terms of such issues, and we also hope to incorporate the aspects of operating within their communities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Zano. And I think to add to other colleagues, the way the Manicaland group has been working, the CBOs in the different communities, they've sort of established communities becoming the keepers of other community members. And I say this case in point, there was an issue about a young girl who, child marriage case, or a girl was abused, and it was the community members that actually reported the grandfather or the grandmother. So the community is actively with the awareness raising and the training. So the communities are literally watching each other and, keeping an eye on each other. So the entire communities are involved. So any other question before we move to the next one? If anybody else has got a question, if you want to come in after the next two presentations, that's okay. You can take note of your questions, and then you can also raise them later. So I think now we are moving on to the last two presentations, exploring. So now we're looking at experiences of GBV among women and girls with disabilities, as well as experiences of GBV amongst women in public spaces. So we'll start with exploring the experiences of gender-based violence among women with disabilities in Bulawayo, Matobo, and Umzingwane. And I think Sandra is taking us through this. Over to you, Sandra.
Okay, thank you, Molly. How are you? How is everyone? My topic is exploring the experiences of gender-based violence among women with disabilities in Bulawayo, Matobo, and Umzingwane. I got inspired to do this research after reviewing literature that disability is on the rise globally. You find that in 1974, disability prevalence globally was 10%. In 2011, it was now at 15%, and it's going to increase due to an increase in life expectancy, wars, strife, natural disasters, and an increase in non-communicable diseases. And a point to take note is that the majority of these women, they live in developing countries. Like 80% of people with disabilities are in developing countries. And also, given the backdrop of pillar number 6, where we are trying to build a movement where we leave no one behind, I realized that there is a problem where the GBV discourse hardly makes specific text to refer to women with disabilities. If you are to look at global policies, since the DeVol 1993, you find that even the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, they later on acknowledge that there was a gap, a policy gap in 2010. So the GB discourse, even here in Zimbabwe, it has been hardly explicit on what it intends to do to women with disabilities to be protected and to enjoy the communities they live in. There's also scant GBV data on women with disabilities. For example, in Zimbabwe, we use the ZDHS data from Simstat. Their gender-based violence data is not disaggregated on disability, and we are not aware whether of the prevalence of violence among women with disabilities in Zimbabwe. Another problem is that culture, norms, beliefs, and values, they contribute to the abuse of women with disabilities. For example, there are myths surrounding the sexuality of women with disabilities. Some believe that they are sexual, hence virgins, therefore prone to virgin cleansing. Some believe that they're hypersexual, therefore they need to be tamed or to be sterilized. They are sterilized in some instances. And then there are norms, gender role expectations. Some believe that women with disabilities are not cannot be good wives and good mothers. Hence, all this is building up to the abuse of women with disabilities. Then survivors of gender-based violence with disabilities rarely access services. So these are the problems we have from the global scale to even here in Zimbabwe. So my objectives are to explore the main forms of GBV experienced by women with disabilities, to establish sociocultural determinants perpetuating gender-based violence among women with disabilities, and to assess the availability, accessibility, and acceptability of GBV support services. But you need also to note that my study right now is based on secondary data, as I am yet to complete my data analysis. So the full presentation will be available on the 30th of September. My methodology, the target population was women with visual, speech, hearing, and visual impairments aged 18 to 65. The study areas Bulawayo, Matovo, and Umzingwane. Study design, qualitative research methodology, and I conducted 24 in-depth interviews and 6 key informant interviews with nurses and victim-friendly unit officers. Data analysis used in vivo and for ethical considerations, an approval letter from the University of Zimbabwe Center for Population Studies, Ministry of Women Bulawayo, DA Matowe, and DA Umzingwane. Next slide, please. Yes. So from the findings, WHO 2011 demonstrated that 80% of women with disabilities have experienced sexual violence. Here in Zimbabwe, Save the Children 2004 also noted that 87.4% of women with disabilities had experienced sexual violence. Also, this was affirmed by the 2014 CIDA report, which opined that sexual violence among women with disabilities still hovering above 80%. 87% of women with disabilities also have experienced emotional violence in their lifetime. This is a Bangladesh study by Hassan and others in 2014. For physical violence, agent in South Africa realized that 61.5% of women with disabilities have experienced physical violence. So if we are to look at these findings with the ZDHS data we have and which has been used to formulate programs and policies in Zimbabwe, we see that there are huge loopholes. For example, ZDHS 2015 says 35% of women in general, age 15 to 49, had experienced physical violence, 14% sexual violence. So you can look at the problem. We are trying to build a movement, but the data we are using is flawed because it's not explicit or not disaggregated on gender-based violence among women with disabilities. Gender role expectations, societal discriminations, weak family and social support were also found to perpetuate GBV among women with disabilities. Here in Zimbabwe, there were studies by PETA 2016-2017, Rugo and Maposa, and there are other studies in Ethiopia by De Setao and by Tefera, which points to the same. women with disabilities also found to put up with abuse for longer periods than women with disabilities by WHO 2011. And this is because they rely on the perpetrators of violence. So for my recommendation, I recommend that the government, civil society, and other relevant stakeholders should translate GBV material into Braille and sign language so that women with speech, hearing, and visual impairments are not left behind. GBV data from national surveys such as SIMSTAT need to be disaggregated on disability status, just like how it is disaggregated on one's level of education or marital status. There is need for policy and program inclusivity to cater for women with disabilities. Then women with disabilities need to be empowered to speak out their rights and needs in their communities for communities to be more inclusive. This is because you find that women with disabilities, they live secluded lives. Most of them, they are not outgoing. So for their concerns to be addressed in communities, they need to be given platforms to air out their rights, to air out their aspirations, and even for them to give know-how on how violence or gender-based violence can be addressed. So I was thinking in terms of movement building, pillar number 6 of leaving no one behind, we also need not to impose prescriptions to women with disabilities. We don't need to do something thinking they need this. We cannot do anything without them. So my recommendation that we need to hear their views. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And I think we move on to the next presentation, which is women's experiences of gender-based violence in public and urban spaces, the case of 4th Street Bus Terminus and Overspill Shopping Center in Epworth. And this will be led by Sharon. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Maureen. How are you, everyone? I was looking at women's experience of gender-based violence in public urban spaces, and the cases were 4th Street Bus Terminus and Overspill Shopping Center in Epworth, Harare. So when I was reading literature, I found out that most of the studies, they are skewed in favor of gender-based violence that happen within the private domain, as opposed to those that happen within the public domain. While women are out there using public transport, public services such as markets, shopping centers, amongst others. This is not to undermine gender-based violence that happen within the private space, but to show the relevance and salience of gender-based violence that happen within both private spaces and public spaces. So to explore women's experience of gender-based violence within the public spaces, I decided to use 3 objectives, which are to identify the nature and extent of gender-based violence within the public spaces, to establish reasons behind, and to deduce and indicate suggestions and measures to do with gender-based violence in public urban spaces. To comprehensively capture women's experience of gender-based violence within the public spaces, I decided to use mixed methodology approach, which was supported by the convergence parallel design, and my targeted population were women aged between 18 years to 60 years, non-governmental organizations, and the victim-friendly unit. And the sample size was 400 women, and 300 were from Overspill, and 100 were from 4th Street Bus Terminus. In terms of the nature and extent of gender-based violence within the public spaces takes the form of verbal, sexual, physical, economic, and sexual violence. The most common form of violence is verbal violence. And I found out that this verbal violence, it usually affects women who are between 18 to 35 years. And gender-based violence that occurs within the public spaces is interconnected, whereby one form of violence leads to another form of violence. For example, it might start as verbal violence, then manifest into physical or sexual violence. Gender-based violence within the public spaces, it happens nearly on a daily basis. And despite it occurring on a daily basis, people are not reporting, so there is low reporting of cases, as only 18.25% of my participants say that they have reported cases of gender-based violence within the public spaces. So in terms of the contributory factors to gender-based violence within the public spaces, I realized that toxic masculinity is one of them. For example, for one to prove his manhood or that he is a real man, he has to use or assert violence on women so that he can be called a real man. Then there is gender binaries. Generally, spaces are divided. So public spaces are regarded as male spaces, and male perpetrators use violence to downgrade women so as to push them away. Then there is subcultural socialization of TALs and commuter omnibus workers. Mostly people, they jokingly say that commuter omnibus workers, they belong to the same parent because of their similar traits, which are violent in nature. So in order for them to lure customers, they use those traits which impose violence on women. Then there is transitory and anonymous nature of public spaces. Within public spaces, people will be on transit and anonymous to each other. So perpetrators, they use that advantage to impose violence on women because of their anonymity. Then there is shrinkage of economic space. As most people are now moving into urban areas, they are engaged into informal economic activities, and these informal economic activities, they are being carried out within the public spaces. So people are fighting for spaces. So through those fighting for spaces, men usually impose violence on women so that they can win the spaces. There was also laxity of law enforcement because of law reporting. People are imposing violence on women and taking advantage of them not reporting. Then there is recommendations. They are divided into two. There is recommendation for public spaces and recommendation for transport spaces. In terms of the public spaces, there is need for an engagement of educational campaign or social mobilizations in changing the norms. This can be incorporated by CBOs, whereby they can target transformation of masculinities. On this one, I can salute the Matabeleland South, which is carrying the He for She campaign, which is part of the engagement of educational campaign. Then in terms of installation of key educative messages, I feel there is a need for CBOs with the help of implementing partners to educate people or community members through billboards and loudspeakers. There is need for government to ensure that each popular or busy public space is equipped with police posts, because among the reasons of not reporting at Overspeed Shopping Center, it was due to the distance between the police and the public space. So there is need for a police post per each public space. And also there is need to reduce red tape within the police procedures. Then in terms of the last objective for public spaces, second from last, consequences of gender-based violence within the public spaces, they are health related. For example, there is trauma, injuries, and death. So there is need for policymakers to ensure that gender-based violence falls under the public health issues. There is also need for community organization and community leaders such as church and schools to educate women to be assertive, to say no, and to report cases of gender-based violence. Then recommendations for transport sectors. There is need for use of transport infrastructure to raise awareness on issues to do with gender-based violence. This can be through packaging of messages that protect women from gender-based violence. There's also need to train transport operators and workers to be more gender sensitive in protecting women. This can be used by the Traffic Safety Council, whereby they can incorporate it on their defensive driving course, so that the transport operators and workers can be educated in terms of gender sensitive issues. Then there is a need to mainstream employment of women as transport workers. From my study, most of the perpetrators, they're usually trades and commuter omnibus, which are male. So there is need to employ women as transport workers so that they can help to reduce gender-based violence. With this, I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks to both presenters. So I'm going to open it up to comments, questions and comments. I see in the chat there is a lot of congratulatory messages to both presenters and a lot of interest generated on the women with disabilities, GBV amongst women with disabilities. And I know, Karen, this is one topic you're interested in. And Donald also made a comment on the issue around violence in public spaces, and that this is something that South also wants to take into account, wants to take on board, is one form of violence actually leads to another, from verbal to physical, particularly in public transport and public spaces. So colleagues, I'm opening it up to questions, comments to the two presenters, to Sandra and to Sharon. Yes, Talent says, thank you for the informative research. Indeed, we can't have GBV response services, which are one size fits all. So I'm opening this up to questions, comments. Guys, you are free to talk. You can just raise your hand and you can come in. I see we have a lot of IPs in the meeting, so please, IPs, do come in with questions. There may be something that one of the different districts or provinces is doing that you might want to replicate in your area, or at least to learn more about so you can replicate in your area. Like Sekai was asking a lot about the peace huts, so this may be something that Much Central wants to take on board. So colleagues, questions, comments, and well done, Sharon and Sandra.
Hello,
Yes.
Molin.
Yes, Gift, please do go ahead.
Good morning,
Gift?
Molly. Good morning, everyone. Okay, I was waiting for the first, for someone who was talking before me. It's okay, I'll go ahead. Maybe in terms of the first presentation, based on our focus also in terms of the work that we are doing, I just wanted to highlight that it's an important area of that she is looking at. And also I feel maybe also in terms just to amplify it, I realize that she's sort of making more emphasis and focus on Pillar 6. But when I'm looking at the issues to do with the experiences of women with disabilities and girls with disabilities, based on also the experiences that we have seen, you realize that there is that interlinkages between maybe even all the pillars, the 6 pillars that we are doing under Spotlight. You look at the issues to do with even to access to services, realize the issues to do with the costing, the costs that are associated with accessing those services for women and girls with disabilities across the various districts. You look at our institutions, are our institutions accessible to women and girls with disabilities? You look at our legislative and policy framework, is it really inclusive? Does it cater for the different segments or the different needs of persons with disabilities? So I think maybe that would also sort of come as a justification for that great topic that she has also selected, because in all those pillars we start to see the bottlenecks, we start to see the gaps emerging at the end of the day. So I think that is one a key area that can maybe also be amplified and also lead to a greater focus on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gift, for raising this. I mean, definitely important. Instead of just looking at them and the issues and the challenges that they face, but looking, as you explained, in terms of accessing justice, in terms of social accountability with institutions, duty bearers, looking at prevention efforts, particularly that we've been focusing on in Pillar 6, and then looking at the service provision in the data. I think she touched on the data in terms of there not being enough data and enough disaggregation by disability status, particularly on GBV statistics that are being collected nationally. So I think that's a very good, and I think this is for you, Sandra. I think as you look into your analysis, as your thesis is not yet finished, so this is something I think you can take on board, and we can share the 6 pillars of Spotlight if you don't have those ones, to look at how women with disabilities are actually experiencing across all the 6 pillars, particularly even around GBV. Say if they are abused, can they access justice? Can they request certain things? Can they access services if something does happen to them? You know, those kinds of things. So anybody else? I think, was it Donald who had started to speak when Gift came in?
Yes, Maureen, thank you so much. I actually wanted to comment on Sharon's presentation about women's experiences in public open spaces. Generally, I would say there's actually been a rise in the number of conductors in the Zupco public transport company. And those females, actually, those ladies are actually subjected to some form of abuse by men who at times who actually will be customers. So in as much as we might say there's need for us to employ more women in the public sector, it might not be adequate for us to fight gender-based violence. The best thing that we have to do is to try and work around changing the mindset of men and how they behaved around women in public spaces. Because as we speak right now, there are a lot of conductors in the Zupco transport sector, but still those conductors are actually subjected to some form of abuse, especially verbally. So I think the great need might be on actually having some intense campaigns on trying to change the mindset of men in public on how they behave around women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donald. Kuzi, I saw your hand was up. And other colleagues, please do come in so that it's not a meeting of 5 people. We really, really would love to hear your thoughts and your comments. Kuzi, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, ladies, for your presentation. Also, I wanted to maybe add something to Sharon's presentation, that maybe if we look into recommendation of also raising awareness of maybe the security sector, because in some public places you see that violence will be like verbal, physical, gender-based violence will be taking place maybe in front of police officers. So I think maybe we need to raise awareness, or how we can support the system of the security system so that they start taking violence in public places seriously, because it has really been normalized and people are embracing it. They see it as if it's normal. So maybe recommendation could go around maybe strengthening security systems and everyone who's responsible for that to take violence in public places seriously. Thank you. Over to you, Melon.
All right, thanks, Kuzi. Sibusisiwe, and was it Violet or Rufaro, I think, who just raised their hand? Sibusisiwe, go ahead.
Okay, thank you guys for the informative presentations. I also had have a comment regarding Sharon's presentation on recommendations for how we can limit GBV in terms of public spaces. So it's a good recommendation to say let's encourage more women to join. That would actually work, but I think, as highlighted by the person who responded just before me, to say I think more work needs to be done on institutions that support ending gender-based violence. For example, the police, the judiciary system, because the lack of data sometimes I think emanates from the fact that people know that even if I report, nothing is really going to be done about it. So there's really no incentive. So I think as body, as the whole Spotlight initiative, in conjunction with other stakeholders, there's need to put a lot of effort into lobbying for functioning institutions in terms of judiciary and law enforcement, so that if someone sees that when they commit a violation, let's say sexual harassment and something like that, and one person can be put as an example to say, this is what happens to you if you violate other people's rights, it will actually come out as an effective method of addressing gender-based violence. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Busisiwe. And I think some of that work is currently ongoing within Pillar 2, which is working with institutions. In some parts of Pillar 1 on legislative reviews, particularly around reviewing the mandatory sentencing for rape and stuff. And so for that, it's actually trying to look at the punitive measures that people should actually be facing. So it is a good recommendation that definitely should be included. The more enforcing, the more it's indicated and is talked about, I think hopefully the duty bearers can start taking note. Rufaro, was it Rufaro or somebody would raise their hand with Sibusisi? I can't remember who. They removed their hand quickly. Rufaro, yes, it was you. All right, go ahead, Rufaro.
Okay, hi everyone. I think I like Sharon's topic a lot because as a young woman, I can relate to it so much. It's actually a nightmare to travel, especially if you're using public transport, because sometimes you face body shaming. Men around can easily pass nasty comments about your body type or anything, and they can even sometimes drag your luggage to take you to a certain vehicle so that they can get into that car. And I think it's something that really needs everyone to be involved, because I believe part of movement building is getting even the citizens to be involved in initiatives. But currently you realize you can even see a certain lady being harassed and there'll be about 10 or more people at the bus stop. They'll all just be looking, and the lady especially can be body shamed, mean comments being passed about their dressing, about their body type and so on. So I really like a topic, and I hope one day we'll reach a point where it will not be okay for someone to be harassed in public whilst everyone else is just looking without actually helping them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rufaro, for that. It's really, really important to rally people to come in and stand for others. Zano, I see your hand is up. Please come in. Zano, Zano,
All right.
go ahead.
Hello.
Yes,
Thank
go ahead.
you, Sharon, for Right. So on public transport, it's actually a critical topic, but perhaps you might have also come across one of my blogs, the perspectives of a passenger, and in this blog I narrowed down my presentation on the change that we have recently seen in terms of public transportation, in which computer makombi, they have been outphased, and the government is trying to systematize the public transport sector, and we are now having a Zupo which is quite more coordinated. Because basically my blog was speaking on the aspect of the competition that these transporters are having in trying to get more gain by getting more customers in using their buses. So this is where basically this aspect of violence is coming from. And in some of the cases, you would notice that from this kind of a perspective, it is actually directed for women at large. The issue of we are having more people into the compete, they begin to use this kind of their transport systems. But in trying to systematize, it changed this aspect to this change that we are witnessing, the coming in of ZUPCO. Then also as a recommendation to people, and as much as we now have this kind of a system whereby the public transportation system is now manned by the government, the ministry, it is now easier for us now to use the findings from Sharon to say, from these findings, how best can we approach now ZUPCO? Because earlier on it was difficult to approach a private combi operator to say, I want to do this kind of a program within your combis. Like for us, actually, we were working on another awareness campaign where we called it a ZUPCO campaign, whereby
you're breaking a little bit.
Actually communicated with the ZUPCO people. We wanted to do a campaign through in their buses whereby we'll be talking about GBV, and all couldn't manage to pursue that initially is almost done to say, let's just organize the system of transportation to launch some campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zano. And I think the initiative you're speaking about, I think our colleagues in Mozambique have done something like that. They've got a bus that actually moves up and down, where they've got colleagues who get on that bus and they are raising awareness against GBV. And then I think maybe also to take note of ours, something also to bring to the table, as much as the ZUPCO, as much as the combis have been banned, the ZUPCOs, it seems, are not enough. In Harare in particular, I think we've seen a couple of Twitter videos on with, you know, so many people trying to get on the bus, or people being stranded with the curfew now. By 6 o'clock, people have to be out of town, and there don't seem to be enough buses. And we see women, you know, men touching women whilst they're getting on the bus. So as much as I think they've banned the combis, I think the government still has a lot of work to do in terms of ensuring safety of women, particularly when the buses are not enough and there are so many people that actually need to use them and are trying to beat the curfew to get out of town. So Rufaro, I don't know if that's an old hand or it's a new hand.
It's an old hand.
It's an old hand. Okay.
Yes.
So colleagues, anybody else? Maybe I can, I will pick on someone. Karen, if I can ask you, you've asked a lot of questions before around women with disability. If I can maybe ask you to share a few of your experiences in March Central in terms of what raised that concern. Karen? Is Karen here? Okay, it looks like Karen dropped off. So I think if we have any other comments or anything from colleagues. All right, so maybe I hand over to you, Simba. I think I am done. Most of the comments are thanking the presenters. So over to you, Simba.
Thank you so much, Maureen, and thank you to all the presenters for the insightful presentations. Thank you to our participants, our IPs, and the different people who are plugging in, different supervisors and other organizations. Tomorrow, we are going to have another conversation with our Lightbulb Moments, and we are focusing on the role of technology in ending violence against women. And I think this is a timely topic, and we are really urging you to plug in and also encourage others to also plug in. We'll also be looking at the social and economic cost of GBV as well.